Carl Jung was a man who never gave simple advice, and yet, throughout his vast writings and lectures, one principle emerges as if it were a hidden thread, weaving through all his thoughts. It is the rule that life requires us, above all else, to become whole. Not perfect, not flawless, not even happy in the shallow sense, but whole. For Jung, the journey of human existence is about confronting and integrating the hidden parts of ourselves, the neglected shadows, the inner contradictions we would rather avoid. To forget this rule is to live half a life. To remember it is to step into the possibility of real transformation. Jung believed that the modern individual often suffers not because of external oppression, but because of internal division. We live in fragments, torn between the masks we wear for the world and the feelings we bury deep inside. Society rewards appearances, but the soul craves authenticity. The only rule Jung wanted us to remember is that to live meaningfully, one must face oneself fully, even the darker parts. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, he wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. Emotional discipline, freedom, and wisdom all flow from this central insight. This rule is not comfortable. To confront the shadow is to confront the truth that we are not as noble, as kind, or as pure as we would like to believe. It means acknowledging envy, greed, cruelty, and weakness, not as things to exile, but as parts of ourselves that carry energy and potential. The danger of ignoring the shadow is that it does not disappear, it takes control unconsciously. We project it onto others, blaming them for what we refuse to see in ourselves. Whole nations, Jung warned, can be swept into madness when collective shadows are denied. But the individual who remembers the rule, who works to integrate rather than deny, begins to live from a deeper center. Jung often spoke about individuation, a word that can sound abstract, but it simply means becoming who you truly are. This is not about following every impulse or indulging every desire. It is about listening to the psyche as a totality, letting the conscious and unconscious speak to each other, and gradually forming a unity out of multiplicity. The rule is a call to courage, because to see oneself clearly is perhaps the most frightening act a person can perform. And yet, it is also the most liberating. Why is this Jung's most important rule? Because without it, all other advice collapses. You cannot build authentic relationships if you are not authentic with yourself. You cannot lead others if you are secretly enslaved by hidden fears. You cannot find meaning in life if you are at war with your own psyche. To remember the rule is to place self-knowledge above pretense, wholeness above image. Think of how often our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from our refusal to face it. A heartbreak becomes unbearable because we repress our grief. Anger becomes destructive because we deny it until it erupts. Anxiety festers because we refuse to look at its roots. Jung understood that healing does not come from escape, but from encounter. The shadow faced becomes a source of strength. The wound acknowledged becomes a source of wisdom. The fear embraced becomes the doorway to courage. It is tempting to dismiss this as psychological jargon, but Jung's wisdom is profoundly practical. Imagine you are caught in constant conflict at work or in your relationships. You blame the others. They are difficult, irrational, unfair. But Jung would gently remind you to ask, what part of this conflict reflects something in me? Perhaps it is my need for control, my hidden insecurity, my suppressed anger. To remember, the rule is to use every difficulty as a mirror, to see in the outer world a reflection of the inner one. In doing so, life ceases to be random chaos and becomes a teacher. Jung was not naive. He knew this journey into the self is lifelong. He knew that many would prefer distraction, entertainment, and conformity to the painful work of inner growth. But he also knew that those who avoid this work eventually pay a greater price. Midlife crises, depression, existential emptiness. These are not accidents but symptoms of a neglected soul. The only way forward is to return to the rule. Confront the shadow. Listen to the unconscious. Integrate what was once rejected. One of Jung's most powerful insights was that the psyche is self-regulating, like the body. Just as the body seeks balance when injured, the psyche seeks wholeness when divided. Nightmares, compulsions, even breakdowns are not meaningless. They are attempts of the unconscious to force our attention to what we have ignored. To remember the rule is to treat these disturbances not as enemies, but as signals. They are the psyche's way of calling us back to ourselves. And there is beauty in this. For when we begin to integrate, we discover that the shadow is not only darkness, it holds creativity, vitality, and energy we never knew we possessed. Many artists, thinkers, and leaders have found their genius precisely where others would only see flaw. What society rejects, the individual can transform. Jung wanted us to see that our very brokenness contains the seeds of our wholeness. This is why his wisdom still resonates in an age of anxiety. Technology has made us faster, richer, and more connected. But it has not made us whole. We curate images of ourselves online while ignoring the real self within. We consume distractions endlessly, yet remain restless. Jung's rule is more urgent than ever. Look within. Not to escape the world, but to engage it more fully. Only when we have faced ourselves can we act with integrity, create with authenticity, and love without projection. At its core, the only rule Carl Jung wanted you to remember is simple, but not easy. Do not turn away from yourself. Respect the darkness as much as the light. Seek wholeness rather than perfection. Trust that the path through the shadow is also the path to your true self. To live by this rule is to accept that life is not about erasing contradictions, but about holding them together until they reveal a deeper unity. And perhaps this is the greatest wisdom, that what we fear in ourselves is often the very key to our transformation. Jung would tell us that to forget this rule is to live as a stranger in our own soul. But to remember it is to take the first step toward becoming truly human, aware, whole, and alive.